Okay, here we are. We're back with Joshua Espinoza. As you can see, you might realize he's a pianist, and he will be here in another week at sharp 9 for the second time. So welcome, Joshua.
Thank you so much, Peter.
And where are you talking from? What place in the world?
I'm in Baltimore, Maryland.
Right. So you've settled around there, I think, along with many other musicians. Baltimore being one of the quieter jazz hubs around, but there's a lot going on there.
There's actually a really active jazz scene, local and otherwise. You know, we've got some really fantastic musicians that live in the city, and then also do a significant amount of touring.
Yeah, well, just the fact that was it Todd Barkin brought Keystone Corner to Baltimore from San Francisco,
yeah,
and has made it into a national jazz venue.
Absolutely, yeah. He's bringing in some amazing names on a weekly basis. So we're really thrilled. We're really thrilled that we've got that here in the city.
Yeah, it's and I've been surviving on online live streams on and off until recently. And so even now I'm still checking into the Keystone and occasionally on the Musique in Baltimore. And so, yeah, there's it's marvelous that they've had both live and live stream things going on. And you'll be at Keystone Corner, I think, starting your tour in 4 days, I think.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, on Wednesday. Yeah, that's where we're starting.
Okay, we're going to launch this with a little bit of Joshua's music to familiarize him with you, since it's been a couple of years, and who knows what being in the middle of COVID has done to our memories. I can only talk about mine. But here we go. Let's take the A train for a little while. Oh, ah, interesting. It doesn't want to stop, but let me go back to it. There we go.
There it is.
There we go. Back, now we'll get back to you. Ah, good, good. I haven't done Zoom in a little bit, and it's like, oh, which
It's always a
button?
bit, I know it's always a bit of a learning curve every time.
Have you been doing any teaching via Zoom over this period?
Yeah, absolutely. All of my students went virtual. I did some Zoom, but I actually, honestly, I used my cell phone for a lot of teaching just via
Oh, good for
FaceTime.
you.
So
That's tricky. I mean, there are all sorts of variables, but I think of this as the year in which musicians learned about IT.
oh, I've learned so much, and you know what? I think it's actually made us adaptive too, both in the performance realm and the teaching realm. You know, and the entrepreneurship realm. I mean, you know, just this sort of forced virtual switch has really taught us a lot.
Yeah, for sure. That's a nice version of A-Train.
Thank you. Thank you so
It was
much.
lovely, lovely. In the many ways you can play A-Train, that's for sure.
Thank you. I get a lot of inspiration. There's another wonderful jazz pianist named Gerald Clayton
Oh
who
God, yeah. Ooh.
who was a big inspiration for me, and so that particular arrangement of that, you know, I felt like was inspired by his particular style. So I'm glad you like it.
Well, Gerald Clayton is a piano god as far as I'm concerned, and if you're an acolyte of his, at least at the moment, that's excellent because
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
got
I feel the same. You know, I worship at his keyboard because he's so amazing.
yeah. Well, tell us more about yourself. I know that the Sharp Nine audience is always interested in where musicians come from and how you became the musician you are now.
I grew up in Greensboro, actually, Greensboro, North Carolina.
Aha. Then I can claim you as a North Carolina native.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Excellent. I will add that.
I claim it myself. I grew up as a child. You know, my very earliest years were in Southern Virginia, which is where a lot of my family's from.
Yeah.
Like Martinsville area, and then excuse me, and then I moved to Greensboro in the 3rd grade, and then I went to high school in Greensboro, and so my formative musical years were in North Carolina. I started studying jazz piano in high school, and eventually ended up going for my undergrad to Furman University in South Carolina, studying classical music, but always having like jazz as like a main interest. And then I ended up going to Indiana University for a graduate degree, and made this official switch to jazz when I was at IU. And
Did you have to go through a ceremony?
What's that?
Did you have to go through a ceremony? Sometimes those camps can be far apart.
They're pretty far apart. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of there's some overlap, but yeah, I found that it was just too challenging to, you know, if you're going to be a successful classical musician, you have to only think in that realm. And I didn't, you know, I was too interested in jazz and the sort of creativity allotted, you know, to jazz musicians. So I switched and you know, am thankful for my classical foundation, you know, and a lot of my inspiration when I write my pieces comes from classical composers, classical music, harmony and texture.
Yeah, sure. No, there are a lot of musicians have gone that path, and they, you know, that the classical side gives you something, but it doesn't give you enough, and it doesn't lure you into the magic of the same kind of improvisation that you can do in jazz. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and the conversations that you can have, with other musicians. That's what I love so much. Which is why I love playing with my trio, with Jaron Lamar Davis on the drums and Chris Monson on the bass. They are like two of my favorite people to play with. We kind of just gel. So whenever we're up
Yeah.
there, I feel like we're just talking to each other. We're just like beating around the bush, like having a conversation. Just happens that we're playing our instruments.
That is as it should be.
Yeah.
I do believe. Well, how did you find your way to Baltimore?
Well, my husband is a clarinet player, and
Huh.
we met in South Carolina in Furman, when we were doing our undergrad, and he ended up winning a job with one of the premier Army bands playing clarinet. So,
Aha. Now, let me think about this. I'm trying to remember. There is a young trumpeter from the coast of North Carolina, Eric Williams, who played at Sharp 9 earlier this year, did interviews with him. He was just about to join the Army band, the Army jazz
there's
band.
a lot of them. So,
well, yeah, oh, wait, that's right.
So,
Now, I didn't ask, clarinet
uh-huh.
isn't necessarily jazz.
Right. No. He's a classical player.
Okay, so he's on one of those Army bands.
Yes, that's right. Well, no longer. He did 4 years, but we ended up wanting to stay in the Baltimore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for musicians like yourselves, that makes an awful lot of sense, since there's so much
work,
so much going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of vibrancy, to the culture or the cultural life and the options that musicians have and outlets to play. And we're only 3 hours from New York City, a couple hours from Philadelphia, so
yeah. And let's see. Oh, well, you'll be on tour too, so you're coming here through a circuitous route.
Yeah,
so
we're going Baltimore and then Northern Virginia,
right,
and Warrenton, Asheville, Durham,
yeah,
Newport News, and then we're back home. So a short tour this time around.
And I thought I saw more gigs beyond that too, further south. I maybe
in January.
Did I get that right?
Yeah, in January we're going to Arkansas.
Oh wow.
And Memphis, Nashville, and then in March of next year we've got another tour that'll take us to Chattanooga and Louisville, Kentucky, Indianapolis, potentially Cleveland. So we're still still in the works.
Well, that's great. I mean, I know that I saw somewhere in looking for information about you. No, you were so happy to get back to playing with your trio again, and now you're just exploding fitfully around the eastern United States.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to be playing as much as possible. Obviously, the pandemic put a big damper on our plans, but now that it seems like places are opening back up and people are willing to to step foot outside, we're hoping that bodes well for the music industry.
Yeah, I was at Sharp 9 last night, and Dave told me about ticket sales looking good for next week, which heartens me because I've been pretty careful, but at the same time, I'm much, I'll go to places that require vaccination, which are few and far between, but that includes Sharp 9. Mm-hmm. But the Delta virus has thrown people a bit off stride. Mm-hmm. But I think we're realizing now, there are places we can go. It is safe. Wear your mask, blah, blah, blah. And you can still listen to the music.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what can people expect? Now, we've heard to take the A train, so we know about that.
Well, I think that if you are a jazz fan and a jazz aficionado, you might hear us play some things that you've never heard a jazz group play. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, actually, some of our favorite music to play are not jazz standards in the traditional sense. Instead, we like to cover and create our own arrangements of other popular songs. For instance, the songs of Paul McCartney and John Lennon. Really, a lot of Beatles songs. We're actually going to be on this tour. We're going to be sort of debuting an arrangement of Eleanor Rigby that we haven't played before for audiences. So we're excited about that. Burt Bacharach and we Billy Joel. So, for me, one of my goals is to bring new audience members to the jazz listenership. And, my philosophy of it is if you can attract a listener with a melody that they know and love, you can really bring them into this, somewhat sophisticated world of jazz music, which involves letting your guard down a little bit, because jazz at a certain can be a little off-putting to some folks, but I think that it's not. I think that truly jazz is a welcoming art form, and one of my ways to welcoming new jazz listeners is by playing maybe songs that they would actually recognize. Cole Porter tunes are beautiful and I love them, but fewer and fewer people know those melodies anymore. And I think that there's a wealth of beautiful songs written within the past 50 years that that are ripe for arranging and performing for jazz musicians.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the more we mine that trove of good music and work with it, the more those things will become, I don't know if you can call them standards, but they will be played standardly, and we'll be we're used to hearing them. And I think that too, certainly you're also mining my past, my youth, and that doesn't hurt with the old folks that are the main jazz audience, but then you also can hook other people in as well that like that music.
I mean, to me, Yesterday by the Beatles is timeless. That song will never drift out of memory. I don't think, one of my jobs, I think, also is to help keep those songs, years. So
and the Chardonnay audience is used to that. I'm just thinking that Kate McGarry and Keith Gantz live here and live in Durham, and they perform at Chardonnay pretty regularly. And Kate's got that background of having grown up in a lot of this music and a lot of folk music, Americana, I should call it, or whatever. And she does, and puts a lot of things in, takes contemporary music from back the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and puts puts it in a jazz vibe. And you realize, these are lovely tunes, and we can hum along with you, which helps. It's the big question, and my wife has this issue, is where's the melody? You've taken my melody away. What are you playing? And I think and what I've listened to, you gently introduce people into that.
Absolutely. I think one of my goals, what would make me the happiest is that somebody who has decided that they hate jazz, or that they, jazz is not really my thing, that they leave our concert saying, oh, I do like jazz and I want to hear more of it. and then I can, my style is, inspired by a lot of my favorite musicians, including Keith Jarrett and Gerald Clayton, Chick Corea, and Avishai Cohen, Shai Maestro. I mean, some of these names people might not recognize, but my goal is that they hear our music first, then they might go seek out some more that sounds like it.
Sure.
I would be, my job would be done if somebody listens to our music and then goes and listens to Avishai Cohen and is like, oh, I love this, so.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the age makeup of your audience is next week, because I've noticed There are younger people, and let's see, I'm not middle-aged anymore, middle-aged people coming in, and Sharp 9 attracts a fairly wide audience in addition to the core group of older jazz fans.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think you'll find, let's see, it's almost like ripe territory for a jazz missionary. That should work out. I'll tell you what, I've got a clip of In Your Life on here that I'd like to play before we finish, to
Sure.
give people a sense of what you're talking about.
Sure. And you have that video of us. Is it the video?
Yeah, it's in the video. So
Okay.
let me go to this and then see if my scheme worked that I'm supposed to back up into. Oh, there we go.
Here it is.
And I will play, with all deference to your bass player, I'm going to focus on, I'm going to stop it as I did there before,
That sounds fine.
to give people a hint of your playing.
Thank you.
Early Black Friday deals start
Whoops.
now at Sweetwater. Shop huge holiday savings and check out new deals added daily. And with fast
Excellent.
Thank you.
That's interesting. Yeah, getting your percussiveness with on the piano was interesting, and you did No, that's a unique version.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I love that color that you can achieve by muting the strings inside. And then kind of playing like normal.
Yeah, yeah.
Almost like a kalimba sound or something.
And your drummer really, the problem I have sometimes with doing tunes like that is that the drumming gets too monotonous. It just gets that regular drum just drives me nuts sometimes, especially if it's on a faster tempo. But your drummer really did vary things and kept, while keeping things moving.
Yeah, I mean, Jaron is such a sophisticated, constantly evolving, member of the group. Like he's always finding ways to keep things interesting, but also groove. I mean, it grooves. He grooves so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we have, let's see. This is a groove time, actually, I think. I'm not always happy with some of the grooves, but it's a groove time that I think you just have to get, you have to get into sometimes and be ready for.
Yeah.
Listen, this has been fun.
Thank you.
Do you have any last words for?
I wanted to speak to your audience and just say that I hope to see you on Saturday, November the 13th at Sharp 9 Gallery. If you haven't checked out our music yet, just visit my website, joshuaespinoza.com. You can kind of get a taste of what you'll hear. If this is your first time hearing a jazz concert, I imagine most people here who are watching this interview are jazz fans already. But if not, bring some non-jazz fans and tell them that, listen, I make them a bet or something and see if they leave it being a fan of jazz, then my job is done.
It's bring your grandchild to jazz night.
Bring
or your child, whatever.
That's
someone
right.
younger that would get hooked by the music.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks for your time this Saturday morning, and we will see you at Sharp 9 on Saturday.
Right, yeah.
And hang in there while I stop the recording, folks. Go to Sharp 9 next Saturday night for this band, and you will listen to some of that same fine music.